guests today are Marty Depuis, and Sean Snaith. We join their conversation in the faculty lounge.
So it's been exciting, and I have to admit that some of the history I'm not as up to date on, but it is one of the best honors colleges in the country, without a doubt.
That was dirty pool. I knew you're as new as I am to it. So I just thought maybe you might, if someone had filled you in a little bit better, because it's you're learning about, as you said, the region and the university, and we're at a university that has changed dramatically, really, in a fairly short amount of time. As we were discussing before we went on air, the growth has been phenomenal, and it went from more of a teaching-oriented, small university to, as we said, this behemoth that it's become. And the faculty, there's a transition I notice, but with my colleagues in the business school. Some of the older faculty were here under a different regime almost, where teaching was really the primary objective. But as you move towards a research function, then research becomes more important. So the newer faculty tend to be more oriented in that area. And so, do you find that the older faculty that have been here for a while like the honors program because it maybe is a throwback to the way things were, in UCF's history? And again, I'm making my own backstory up here because I don't know. I'm wondering, what were some of the implications of this, this growth that the university has gone through?
I think we've really attracted faculty across all levels of their professional achievement or attainment. Certainly some of the more senior faculty remember the days when there was only, 15,000, 20,000 students at UCF? And that wasn't that long ago. We had half our size. So there is, I think, an opportunity for faculty, and especially the Honors College faculty, to model great teaching and great scholarship and great civic engagement, so that we do try to find faculty that are well-rounded. I know at a research university, some faculty prefer their lab time, prefer the research more, and that's a valuable contribution to education and to UCF. But equally as valuable are those teachers that are really dynamite in the classroom and really get people excited about their topic and expose them to a way of thinking or to a way of human expression that they've never seen before. And that's, we have a lot of students that come in, especially the Honors College, that know they want to be engineers or doctors or lawyers, and they already are set. They know their career for the next 7 years, right? But then all of a sudden, maybe somebody exposes them to literature or to art or to music, and we require our students to take interdisciplinary seminars so that they are well-rounded. I think a well-rounded education is part of the liberal arts tradition that we both experienced in our education. But it really is, I think, today essential in the economy, for job market, for good citizenship, to be well-rounded and to know about what's going on in Orlando and in Florida and in the United States and in the world, and to understand human expression. And so it's exciting.
You mentioned you kind of know what you're gonna be, and I think in high school, at least where I went to high school, and I think this might be true in many parts of the country, the students that are achievers, they're kind of steered into math and science type classes. You're taking the advanced math and the biology and the physics too, and so when you're plotting out that map of your life that you think is going to actually be accurate when you're young, you're going to be the doctor, you're going to be the engineer, you're going to do biomedical engineering or something along those lines. And then you get to school, you go to a university or a college, and you might get exposed to something that was outside of that, wasn't on the map, so to speak. And I was the same way. I was kind of laughing when you were talking about that. I was a pre-med when I entered the undergraduate school that I attended, which was a liberal arts college, a small college in Pennsylvania, and we had to take courses from across the curriculum as was mandated at a liberal studies type university or college. And I took an economics course, and really, got its hooks in me, if you will. And I, after that first year, changed my major to economics. And I'm going to get that professor if I ever see him again, because he's ruined my life. I could have been a doctor, but it's true. And that's the beauty, I think, of these liberal studies programs. Not only does it give you this broad base that you can understand and digest, the world around you, outside of whatever narrow subfield you ultimately become in. Even if you are a rocket scientist, it's nice to know something about Zen Buddhism, or it's nice to know something about the cultures in Southeast Asia. And I think that's I think it's great that UCF retains this college. Is there a high demand to get into the honors program? I would suspect that
It's very competitive.
Right.
We take about 500 students a fall. So entering class is about 500 students. And it is not just based on SAT scores, even though we have very high SAT scores, 1360, but it's based on well-roundedness and creativity, and what they've done, and how they've applied themselves. Because I think universities struggle with the admissions process, and for some of the students that are potentially the most academically talented, we need to look at many perspectives into determining which ones will add to the Honors College. Just being a bookworm is really not sufficient.
Right.
We want people that are involved in the campus, involved in their communities. We have a student group, the Honors Congress, and it often wins its class for homecoming week. So they're not just people that are stuck in the libraries. There are people that are making a difference in Spirit Week, and also in junior achievement, in the service learning that all of our freshmen do across the Orlando region.
Could you talk a little bit about that? You mentioned it earlier, the service learning. Is there a set of organizations that you've established relationships with that the students go and spend a semester or a year volunteering for?
Our freshman symposium is really unique, and it's a real privilege to be a part of it. In the symposium, the theme of the symposium is evolution of community. And so we look at building community in terms of the Honors College, the university community, and the community partnership with Greater Orlando. So we have a distinguished faculty member every week come in and speak to our class on community from his or her perspective. And so it really gives a great way of exposing students who, like we said before, may have a preconceived notion of what they want to do, to community from a different way of thinking, different type of questions that different disciplines ask. Political scientists ask different questions than sociologists or biologists, or people that are doing musical communities and history. So the student gets a great overview of community from the different disciplines. And then the students break out into small discussion groups of about 15 to talk about that lecture. And that also allows us to have a peer mentor who works with that team. So they have the advantage of having a peer mentor, an upper class honors student, who then is able to lead discussion, but also just check in with freshmen to make sure they're doing well, they're adjusting to college life. Oftentimes a student's academic career is made or broke in their first semester. A lot of times if it's going to be dropout, you'll find it in the first semester. So we want to make sure that our students are adjusting well to college life, and having a student there who's been through freshman and sophomore year help them is a great resource. And it also provides that kind of leadership training for our students, and that we have about 32 team leaders, and that's a competitive process too. And they really give their heart and soul to the incoming class, and it's really nice to see.
So, I mean, there's probably a sense of community within the Honors College. Do the students live in housing that's set aside specifically for honors students, so that they kind of have that experience outside the classroom as well, or is it just you get assigned to whatever dormitory or whatever apartment that you can find? We're
really excited about having our residence hall being Tower 3. That whole complex and that section of the campus is going to be really dynamic and exciting.
Is that by the arena?
Yes,
okay.
The new football stadium and the arena, and there's 4 residential towers, and the Honors College will have a majority, and someday probably the entire Tower 3 facility, which will allow us to do classrooms in the building itself, to have, again, co-curricular activities there, social events, alumni events, parents events. So we really think that learning occurs not just in the classroom, program, but all across campus, in student organizations and clubs and in the residence halls as well.
Right.
So it really is an exciting opportunity there.
One of the things I've read about, and I don't know if this is in the works or not for the Honors College, but a lot of schools, usually liberal arts types colleges, have these faculty and residence programs where
Yes.
you've got a faculty member living in the dorm. And when I first read about these, I thought, good God, why would you ever want to go back
You're
to that situation? I've had enough nights waking up with my hand in a bowl of warm water, as I'm being tormented by my roommates. But I think that kind of makes it you mentioned this learning community where it's not just you go in the classroom and then once you're out, that's it, learning stops until it's time to cram for your exam, where you're kind of constantly immersed in a culture, a community where learning doesn't isn't limited by the blackboard or the classroom,
right.
but events, social events, and arts events and lectures, and it's just sort of a full kind of development of the person.
Right.
And I think that's a really transformational way to approach sort of the chalk and talk method of higher education. So I think that'll continue to augment your program, in my opinion, once you have that in place.
Absolutely. And you're new to campus as well. Tell me about how you're finding UCF and about the program you're running.
I've had some difficult finding UCF. I mean, at least getting to the parking lot where I was supposed to go to early on. But
and all the parking structures look the same.
They look.
I used that as a landmark my first time trying to find it on my own.
Yeah.
And I said, I know it's just to the other side of this parking structure. But all the parking structures, they're not bad as parking structures go, but they're identical.
Yeah, right. We don't say anything bad about the parking on campus. I don't want to get my tag revoked. Now I'm like a homing pigeon. I can kind of go right to my spot, but when people call me and ask for directions, I'm still not able to tell them where to turn to get onto campus. So things are going quite well. I really like the university, and it is, as we've mentioned, a very dynamic place with a lot of growth and a lot of things happening. And it's, many universities are not so dynamic, and they've kind of been there for a long time, and they've got their ways set, and things aren't changing. Here, I think, the storyboard is still half empty, and you've got the pen in hand. And I really have enjoyed kind of being able to shape what our institute's doing and where it's going, and kind of be in an environment where there is so much new activity going on, whether it's in terms of the athletic programs or the academic programs. There's just so much change, and the dynamic here is just you kind of feed off of it, really. And I've enjoyed that, and it helps, I think, kind of fuel my drive and my desire to push the institute forward.
And you're the director of the Institute for Competitive Economics?
Economic competitiveness. Yeah, I know. I didn't come up with the name. That was there when I got here, but. The Institute for Economic Competitiveness, I think, is about 5 or 6 years old. It was something that was founded from Orange County Mayor Richard Crotty, an economic stimulus package they put together, and this was one of the elements in that package. And it was sort of to provide a place where research and studies could be done that could help benefit the public and private sector, and just be able to give some feedback and some guidance on what's next, or where's the economy going, or what's on the horizon. And in a place like Central Florida and Orlando and even the state of Florida, growth has been so rapid, and change has been so fast that it's I think it's useful to have some of these studies that we do and these forecasts that we make there for the decision makers who have to, whether they're the private sector or in government, the decisions that they need to make, to provide some additional information and some guideposts as to what may be coming in the future.
And are you making predictions now? What do you think? How do you see the economy in the next year?
Okay, well, we do quarterly forecasts. We have 2 forecast publications. One is a national forecast, which we forecast the U.S. economy, and then the other publication is what we call the Florida and Metro forecast. In the Florida and Metro forecast, we have a statewide forecast for Florida, comprehensive, detailed, and in that publication we have sub-forecasts for 12 metropolitan statistical areas throughout the state. And the way the models kind of work, and I've described it in the past, and I think it's a good metaphor, is those Russian nesting dolls. You traveled to the Soviet Union, so you've seen these. Are they just in the Ukraine? Is it more of a Ukrainian thing, or is it all over the former Soviet Union?
I think it's all over the former Soviet Union. These are the dolls that they're wooden dolls, and they
you take off the top, and there's another one.
Exactly. Going down. Right. Yeah.
Right. The big outer doll is the U.S. model, and we do our forecast about where we think the U.S. economy is going.
Or is that related to the international economy, though, too?
Well, there's linkages, and it's almost cliche to talk about globalization, but the reality is, if we didn't have the money pouring in from the rest of the world to finance our federal budget deficit, the whole economic landscape of the U.S. would be markedly different from what we've seen over the past 4 years. But I'm going off on a tangent, which is really unusual for me. I'm usually able to keep my focus. That's not true. Back to the model. So we've got the U.S. model, and we it factors in our relationships financially and trade and goods and services with the rest of the world, as well as fiscal and monetary policy. We make that forecast, and then that's the outer doll, and drivers from that forecast then feed down into the next doll, which is our state model and our state forecast. And inside the state forecast are the 12 metros. And so, kind of we start at the big picture, and we kind of narrow our way down to the individual metro area, and we get a fairly complete picture that people are able to see, what we think is happening at all these different levels. And our forecasts, we do provide them for free to be downloaded from the Institute's website, so people can kind of see the full Monty, if you will. There's nothing behind the curtain, so to speak. They know what we think is going to happen with the Fed, and all the way down to what's going to transpire in the Orlando metro area. And back to your original question, I think that we're in the midst of a national slowdown. The economy's slowing. I say slowdown rather than downturn because we're not predicting a recession at all. Some people were, and primarily it's been the cooling of the housing market that has had a dramatic effect nationally as well as locally. But even as the U.S. economy slows, the Florida economy still is growing at a much faster pace than the nation as a whole. And Central Florida and Metro Orlando in particular is growing even faster still. So the economy here is performing quite well, particularly in this context of a slowing national economy.
Is that because of the population growth for Central Florida in particular, or the state as well?
Yes and yes. The population dynamics have become more complex in Florida. I think it used to be, from what I understand and looking at the data, more of a one-way street, for net in-migration. People came in and, they didn't leave till they were shuffling off the mortal coil, so to speak. And now it's a little bit different. You hear anecdotes about people that are leaving Florida to go to the Carolinas or to Tennessee. Florida's probably lost its claim as a low-cost place to live and do business. But even with that complexity, and then there's a third issue, and that is coastal Florida is expensive, and with what real estate prices have been doing in recent years, that's forcing a lot of people from coastal areas to the interior of the state. So we've got a more complex dynamic in terms of the demographics, but net, the population is still growing in Florida, and that is a key driver. We talked about, you're going up in Michigan and what's happening in the Michigan economy and a lot of the Rust Belt. Those states tend to have very stagnant or shrinking in some cases populations, and an economy at base is people, and if you don't have more people, it's very difficult to grow.
If there's no jobs, people will leave, certainly.
And it's a self-reinforcing situation, and that's kind of what's going on here in Orlando. Jobs continue to be produced. Well, people come down here because there are jobs available, and the unemployment rates throughout the state of Florida are remarkably low. Lower than they taught us as undergrads it was possible for unemployment to get.
What is that? Do you recall offhand?
I think it's about 3.5% statewide. And as an undergrad, the natural rate or the full employment rate of unemployment, they told us was somewhere between 5.5% and 6.5%. Well, things have changed certainly, but this is even lower than you might expect to be the case.
Well, you mentioned my home state of Michigan, though. Certainly with the problems the auto industry has faced, you're looking at unemployment rates of 19% and Flint, perhaps some of these other major car manufacturing towns.
Right.
And it's devastating for those
I mean, it's devastating. It's devastating to the people that are going through that, the families, and what the social implications are. It's devastating for governments who have to provide services with the shrinking tax base, and it's a complex problem. It's funny, and we were talking about this earlier. It was like, Detroit and the automotive industry kind of forgot what happened in the 1970s and went back to the manufacturing of large SUVs and pickup trucks that were fuel inefficient, and then up went gasoline prices, and all of a sudden, Japanese automakers and their compacts and hybrids were taking market share again, just like what happened in the 1970s and the early 80s. So, I guess history does repeat itself sometimes.
That's right. We see, Chrysler was bailed out by the federal government in the early 80s, 70s, and now we see Chrysler being spun off from Daimler again.
So somebody else has to take care of this baby. Someone else has to support it. Yeah, and that has implications. One of the areas where housing prices have fallen the fastest has been in Michigan, in the Detroit area, and that's because they've lost this demand side. The underpinning of the housing market really has to do with how well the economy is performing, and that's why I've been kind of anti the notion of the housing bubble, because that implies that it's been speculation driven solely, that there's not real factors driving it. But unemployment rates, do people have jobs? I mean, that determines whether they can make their house payment, obviously. Personal income growth, population, demographics, all these things are really in place still in Florida, and even though there's a large inventory of homes for sale, we're not going to see precipitous price declines. I know you haven't purchased a home yet.
I haven't. I was going to ask you about that.
Don't ask me, because I bought right at the peak, so much for all my prognostication skills. It's painful right now, I think, to be selling a home just because there's so much inventory. And
it was painful to be buying, too, let me tell you. The average cost of a home in our Orange County is, what, $250,000 maybe?
I think that's probably about the median price, and it can go up from there. On the upside, at least you have a lot of houses to choose from, at the peak of the housing boom. A home would go on the market, and that day, 5 offers would come in, all at prices above the asking price. I mean, it was equally as insane on the other side. It was a seller's market, but an insane seller's market. Now it's kind of this crazy buyer's market where, for each buyer, there's 15 or 16 homes to choose from. So, ultimately, I think we're just in a situation where supply and demand have twice gotten out of balance, but those underpinnings are still there. So I don't see a housing recession that we saw, say, in the 80s in Texas when the big oil took a downturn, or the defense industries in California in the 90s, where there was just a lot of layoffs. The economy that is the foundation of housing went south, and then that's when housing really goes with it. Here, I think we're looking at another year to a year and a half of surplus in the housing market, but then I think things will get back to something more normal. Both of these extremes are not normal situations in housing markets. So
you don't see prices dropping dramatically. You think there's a stabilization, but there might not be the kind of value added in 5 years. Some of my friends, who were able to purchase homes 5 or 10 years ago, have seen their property value double or triple. So a $100,000 house 10 years ago is now a $300,000 home.
Yeah, and those I think those were the days, my friend. We thought they'd never end, but they're done. I think this will be one of these unique historical periods that we look back on. I think traditionally, real estate appreciates pretty much in price along the lines with overall inflation. 25%, 30% per annum price appreciation is not normal in real estate markets. So I think the days of flipping when it comes to homes are over, and those that continue to try to do it are probably more likely to end up flipping burgers when all's said and done. the condo market in Florida is a bit unique, and I think there's a little more excess and there was more speculation taking place in condominiums. So I think there may be some more pain and a longer adjustment in that segment of the housing market, and we're starting to see some of that become evident in prices. The way it was, basically, as I understand, you could put a small down payment on a condo even before it was built, and you took ownership of it. So you bought this condo by putting $10,000 down. It was a $300,000 condo, and then it was a $450,000
Once it was
condo.
completed, yeah, you would buy it pre-construction
Right.
for $10,000, like you said.
Exactly.
And then it'd be worth $50,000 more or $100,000 more by the time the building was finished.
Exactly. And at the time, I was in California doing forecasting out there, and I was looking around the country to see what was happening in various real estate markets. And I was looking at Florida, and I came across this website, condoflip.com. I mean, and this really what was going on was evocative of the dot-com bubble, and was really more bubble-esque than I think what the overall housing market certainly was. And that I think is going to require more adjustment and some additional probably pain than single-family housing. But again, the economy's growing. Jobs are being created. People need places to live, and it's been ballast on the economy. It's weighed it down, but it's not taken it under. And there are a lot of people that were predicting that housing was going to trigger the next recession, and some drama queens saying it was going to be the next Great Depression caused by housing. I don't think either of those scenarios are coming true.
So I think I saw the Institute's actually last quarterly report. You had a very humorous section in there about six films that were going to change the or replace on the economy, and one of them was Flipper. So you had,
right. that had its genesis with that condoflip.com website. It was a housing hysteria theater. I've been for a while. I was kind of the crazy guy standing out there saying there is no bubble, and slowly I think things are starting to become closer to the souffle analogy.